Hey everyone, and welcome to today's live class. This is Amy Chan from CakeDecoratingSchools.com, and if you like cake decorating, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to talk a bit about some basic techniques that you can do with your palette knives. Now, if you don't have a set of these little knives yet, and you're not quite sure if you want to get one, and you want to try some things out first, most of us have spatulas on hand. So if you need to, or you want to, and you want to try some things out, but you're not ready to get palette knives yet, you can always use your tapered ones in place of the diamond shaped ones. And you can use those blunt end ones in place of this kind of great shovel one, which I like using for a variety of things. So you can see that I'm using the offset ones in place, and that's to give yourself a good hand position on the cake so that they're easy to use. So I like my little set of offset palette knives, and in a pinch, if I can't find them, or if I didn't have them, you could sub in these. You'll get a little less variety out of these and a little less control. The blades are longer, so it's putting your hand further away from them. So those are just some things to think about. But if you use your little offset spatulas and you kind of like the way it's going, these can be a nice investment because it gives you a variety of those different kind of blade styles on the end, and it's actually a set of like 6 or 7. But I'm gonna use these 3 today. And we're gonna start off by doing some color mixing. We're gonna practice 3 different patterns, an abstract one, a diagonal swipe, and a scallop swipe, all in a tray, and I'll go over in detail how we do those. And then we're gonna pull out a cake at the end, and we'll practice all 3 on that cake, and then go over some little finishing touches and flares. So to start with, I had just a little bit of light pink buttercream. I used just a tiny, tiny little touch of my neon bright pink, and I iced my cake with that. And I've got a little bit extra there that I'm gonna save for some details on that. And then we're gonna go ahead and make 3 other colors. So I just have a little bit of buttercream in 3 bowls, and I'm gonna make 2 additional shades of pink that are darker, and one, I think maybe navy blue. So something for some like nice contrast and a nice deep tone, just to kind of set things off and give us a little more interest. So I'm gonna put my palette knives to the side, bring a little lid over and some toothpicks, and I'm just going to make a few other shades. I'm going to start with some neon bright pink and just a little bit of red, just to give it a little bit of a different tone. I'll grab some toothpicks. I'll just give this some nice little specks here. I'm just trying to make a nice darker shade of pink. It can still be in that kind of light to medium tone. Doesn't have to be too deep. And I don't have much buttercream, so it shouldn't take too much to really get us there. We just want something that's going to be noticeably different than the shade that I've used to ice my cake with, which is why I brought that out and showed that to you all first, so that we can see those beautiful little swipes and little streaks we're going to put on there, and we get a nice read to it, because we want our patterns to kind of stand out, you know, from across the room. We don't want people to have to get up too close and look at them. Otherwise, it's more like a texture. So I can pull my first pink over. You can see that we're getting a good bit of difference there. I just might want to bump it up just a little bit. Just give it a little more pink, a little more red. And that'll give us a nice medium tone to go with that light one. And then I'll do a darker shade as well. And then we'll do some blue. So that's a really nice kind of medium pink. All right, so we're gonna do a darker shade for this. So I'm gonna use drops. Just start out with 2 of that pink and 1 on my red, and we'll see what this gives me. So same kind of color, just more of it. And I love mixing the neon bright pink with the red. It gives you that kind of magenta lipstick-like pink. It's a little chilly in the studio today, which is going to be great for later when we're working on our cake. But even though I warmed my buttercream up ahead of time, it's still a little stiff. It's taking a little more muscle to get it mixed around today. So I think that's actually going to be a really nice intensity. Maybe just bump it up a little more. Anytime you're making colors, you want to make sure, especially if you're putting things next to each other, that they've got enough difference between them that they'll really stand out. Things are too similar, sometimes it can make your patterns and your designs not read clearly, not read well. And color is a great way to make sure that things stand out. Sometimes just a little more is enough to do it. And I think that's going to be it. That's going to give us a really nice difference in value in those two colors. You can see that's really clearly a nice, deep, bright color, and it's really going to pop off of that. And you've got a really stark, intense contrast with the color that we used on the cake that has just like barely any pink in it. So that's going to be super. And then we'll pull over my last little bowl, clean up my area, and we're going to make some navy blue. So if you've never made navy blue before, it's actually not hard. We're going to use royal blue, some violet, and black. Right? So you don't have to buy navy blue color. You can make it yourself. So it's going to be more blue than anything else. So I'm just going to start out, if my bottle will behave for me, with 4 drops of my blue. And I'm just going to give it 1 each on my black and purple. There we go. And that should give us a nice color, and we can just tweak it as we need to. And navy blues are they're pretty fun colors. You can kind of play with the balance too. More purple is going to give you a different effect than if you add more black, right? So if you add more black, it becomes more of like a, I don't even know how to describe that. It just has a different tone to it than if you add more purple and it becomes like a midnight navy blue. I'll add more of a purple tone to it. And I like to start light on the black and blue because it's hard to walk those back. Sorry, the black and the purple. So I want to make sure that I have enough of that royal blue in there first. And then I can add more black and purple really easily to get a nice navy blue. And it's actually almost there. You can see that color is starting to develop. It doesn't look like a royal blue. It's got that kind of dark deepness to it. And I think just 1 more each of the black and purple should be enough to do it so that once it's had time to develop, it's going to be a really nice, beautiful, dark navy blue. You don't want to get it too dark when you're making it. You want to keep in mind that it's going to deepen significantly as it sits. But we just want to give it that nice base tone and try and use your imagination and imagine it a couple of shades darker, what it'll be then. And that is something that gets a little easier to do once you have a little more experience, because you'll kind of know how the colors will behave for you. And I think that's got enough black and enough blue in it now. We've got a really nice color for our contrast. And we're just gonna pop it next to that. And you can see in terms of the amount of color in there, they seem really similar. They're kind of similar intensities. So they're gonna read well next to each other without really competing too much or fighting too much for attention. Okay, so we've got colors mixed for the end for our cake, and we're just gonna pick one, maybe the bright pink, because it might be easiest to see, to practice with. So I'm gonna get the rest of them out of the way. I'm gonna move my color bottles over to the side, and those were all liquid gel colors that we used. So we used neon bright pink, red, royal blue, violet, and coal black to make our colors. And I'm gonna pull over my little sheet tray and talk about my first pattern. So we're gonna do an abstract pattern, and this is most definitely the easiest one. Just forgive me, I've got color on my hands now. I'm trying to get that off. There we go. And I'm going to use my small spatula to do it for the most part, but really you could use any size. So just one of the diamond shaped ones, or if you don't have that, a tapered offset will work too. You're just going to use the tip on the end for it. And we're going to use it more than one way. So typically, when we're doing this, we're just kind of building up a little kind of pill, right, or roll of frosting on the end of that spatula. And then we're going to use it, right, either horizontally and pull down the side of the cake, right? So just kind of at a nice, even pressure, right? And when I do this, I usually angle the spatula so that the back side is kind of making contact with the cake, and it's giving us a nice streak, right, with some nice depth to it. Or you can also, right, go this way. So if you want to make fat stripes, hold it to the side horizontally, and if you want to make skinny ones, we're going to pull down like this. So you can use how you position that spatula to create different widths. And then to make our pattern, we're going to start and kind of make it so it looks like almost like, oh, I don't know, little kind of oscillating waves, right? Or maybe, I'm not even sure how to describe that. So we'll do some small streaks and then have them get bigger as we go towards the middle of our pattern. And then we'll make them get small again. And you can play with the distance between the two, doing some fat, doing some skinny, right, to create a nice little pattern. Start mixing that up with color and you create a nice varied kind of abstract design. It has no real, right, inspiration in nature or anything like that, right? So there's no like object that we're trying to repeat or create. We're not doing anything complicated yet, like trying to make flowers. We're just trying to get a hold of how we're holding the spatula to create different effects. So I'm just going to flip this over because it's a little easier to demo actually on the back of the tray, right? So I've got my spatula. I'm going to pretend that my tray is my cake and just gently pull down. And you can see that gives us a nice little swipe. It's got this kind of varied width and length, right? And as you come into contact with the surface, in this case it would be the cake, right? It's going to start to give you like a nice transparent look to it. It's going to start to get some little areas that are exposed there that don't have frosting. It's just going to give you a really nice, beautiful layer of color on there, right? It's going to look like paint when you do it. And the other way we can do this is just by holding it and going straight up and down. So I'm just going to try and get my arm out of the way there, but just putting a nice swipe like that. So you can see really easily we get two different widths and two different looks. So I'm just pulling that spatula straight down, right? And as you press in and pull, you can see you get an indent in there versus this one that is kind of like flat, right? So just take that spatula and as you're pressing, have a slight angle to it and it'll just give you a nice tapered slope to that versus this one where when we press, we end up digging in a little bit, right, for those vertical lines and getting that nice little indent, right? So we're gonna combo those two little techniques together to give us a nice little varied pattern. And we'll go through in kind of layers of color. I'll start with lighter ones and then use the darker ones and just put little streaks in there, maybe some that are just almost short little lines, little dots, right? Some that are bigger and longer. Right, you can kind of play with how much frosting you load up on your spatula. If you just load it up on the tip, right, and do this, you'll get a thinner streak than if you load up the whole thing where you'll get a fatter one. So you can play with the amount, the color, how you're holding it and how you're positioning it to get a really nice kind of abstract pattern that just gives you a wonderful kind of textural feel. I don't know, it always kind of reminds me a little bit of Southwest themed art. I'm not sure why, but we'll put that to the side and we'll talk about the second one. This one is going to be a diagonal stripe. For this, I'm going to use, right, my larger diamond shape. And I'm going to do a few different things, right? So I'm going to get some frosting onto the tip, and I'm just gonna apply it to the cake first. And then if we imagine that this area is my cake, I'm gonna hold it so that that spatula is almost at a 45-degree angle, kind of in relation to the cake as a whole. And then I'm gonna take that blade and tilt it so the blade itself is at an angle too, right? So I'm gonna angle that blade, and then that way when I push that frosting, I'm gonna make a nice little swipe, right? So I like to angle it so that that back side is kind of touching the cake and the front side is up, and then I push so that I'm gonna get a little fat area on the end, and it looks like a little paint swipe for me. So I'm just gonna take it, right? And this, I think, sometimes can be the hardest. I like using small little containers when I'm doing this, so I have a nice little rim here that I can really use to kind of manipulate my frosting, right? You can see I can kind of mix it a little bit, roll it over, and make those nice little pill shapes so I can build up as much or as little as I want, right? If you end up with too much, right, I can even kind of take away exact precise amounts, right? If I have too much on there and I want to shorten how much is on there, and just kind of chip away at that until you get that right perfect size for what you want to do, right? So for this one, I'm just going to take it, apply, right? And because I want to get a nice kind of angle with this sweep, I'm gonna take it, and I've got it at a nice little kind of 45-degree angle, and I'm just gonna tilt that blade so that that back edge is kind of towards that cake, and then I'm gonna sweep at a nice 45-degree angle, right? And that's gonna give me a nice kind of stylish swipe that goes up to the side. And this is a great way if you wanna put a border on the bottom of your cake, because then you're just taking it and going up, up, up with colors. You can add a fun little burst of color. You can add a border without even needing to pipe anything, which is fantastic. So if you're still working on your piping skills, you want to do something kind of creative, fun, artsy, it just looks like beautiful little paint swipes. Mix up the colors, you know, do 2 or 3 colors, and it's a great way to put some texture, some depth, and some color at the bottom of that cake. And it has kind of a fat edge to the bottom, right? And you can see you get that nice little swipe, and we're gonna get it kind of at an angle. Right. So then the third thing that we're gonna do is what I would call a little scalloped swipe. And for this one, I am going to use this kind of nice little shovel shaped palette knife, right? So it has a nice curved end here. And I'm gonna do the same thing where I'm gonna build up a roll of frosting on that back side, on that back edge near the top. And I'm gonna pull straight down to make little scalloped swipes. So this is a lot like we did our little vertical pull on the first one. We're just using a different tool. The different shapes are gonna help give you different shapes of frosting swipes, basically. So having the right tools can be a big part of making the different shapes. And this one is actually one that'll build to making beautiful petals for flowers. So I'm just gonna do the same thing, right? Grab my frosting. Get a nice little pill on the back, nice little roll. And I'm just going to start where I would imagine, say, the top edge of my cake is, press, and then as I pull down, I'm going to get closer to the surface, eventually touching it and kind of scraping against it. And you can see that gives me, because of the shape of the tool, a nice curved edge to the outside. So this is one that once we get going, once you get a little more comfortable with just manipulating the tools, do a few abstract design cakes, this is one where you can see easily if you rotate it and pull towards the center, you start getting flowers, right? So it's a nice little one to practice if eventually you want to do some beautiful kind of palette knife, flower, floral inspired cakes. It's a step towards that, right? So this is just really easy. We're just gonna pull straight down and it's gonna give us that nice curve on the top because of the curved shape of the tool, right? And if we start kind of away from the surface, and as we pull down, we're getting closer, that allows us to dig in and give us this nice, fine, kind of transparent trail going down there, right? So we have 3 kind of beautiful style techniques that we're gonna do. We have our first abstract design. We're then gonna do some diagonal swipes, and then we're gonna do some scalloped swipes. So I'm gonna pull out my cake, get my other colors over, and I'll do each of these on a section of that cake. So I've got to pull out a turntable. So we're gonna take a brief little pause, and Tom's gonna help me change the camera angle. So we will be right back to do that. All right, we are back. Sorry about the pause. There's just no other way to do it and reposition the camera angles without a little brief break. So we've got our cake out. You can see it's got our nice light pink buttercream on it. I frosted this up yesterday, so it would be nice and firm. Having a chilly cake and warm buttercream is always the way to go. It'll allow you to manipulate the stuff that you're placing on the outside, but the fact that it's cold means that it's going to be easy to press on and work on. You can see it's nice and firm, which means that if I slip or make a mistake, I'm much less likely to actually damage the cake while I'm working on it. So I'm gonna start out with my simple ones and kind of actually work backwards from what I was doing. So I'm just gonna quickly do some little scallop swipes on the top edge. I'm just gonna mix up the colors a little bit. So we'll start with the last technique, and I'm just going to do a little space with this, and then I'm going to do my diagonal, and then I'll save a bunch of area for that nice kind of abstract pattern. So just really easy, right? I'm just going to line, you can see that up with that top edge, and just pull down, right? Now, if I pull the whole thing closer to me, I can actually get a longer streak with this, right? Because I can get the palette knife going straight down for longer, but I actually kind of like the little short ones. So this is one of those things that you can play with. Sorry, my turntable's gonna try and having one of those days where it has a life of its own. There we go. So you can really play with the design look by manipulating how long, right, you pull, how much frosting you load up, but just taking these, right, we can do a series of cute little short swipes, right? If you want them to be longer and have more trailing down from them, then I would recommend not putting it on a board and then just pulling it to the edge of your turntable so you get more range of motion out of it. But I actually like the cute little short ones for this. I feel like it makes a fun little border at the top. And if I want to give it a cute little ombre effect, I can pull over my second color, right? And just go in load up some of my dark pink, right? And just pick a spot in between. And pull down there as well. So you can see it almost gives us this nice little scalloped petal look that I can keep going on and create a lovely little border. So you could start darkest at the top and move down and move into the color of the cake, or you can do what I've done where it's light on top and gets darker as it goes. But you can really play with the color to create a variety of patterns and looks. And because we're using a great little tool with kind of a set width, you know, you get the same little width to all these, and you can make a nice little pattern with them that goes all the way around your cake. Right. So I can just keep going if I want to. And one of the great things about this is if you feel like, I don't like that, you can always scrape it off and do it over again. It's not a problem. Or in some cases, like I didn't quite get the full press, the full coverage, right? I needed a little more buttercream on the outside, just go right on top of it. It's not a big deal, right? You don't have to worry about messing up your cake because the cake itself is really nice and firm. So it's a great way to make a nice little ridged kind of scallop design, add some detail towards the top of your cake. If you wanted to, you could go all the way down the side with this and just layer up those colors and repeat them. Like I've done medium and dark, I could go in with some of my navy blue, some of my light. You can mix up the colors, but you can get a really nice transition, especially with that kind of ombre effect on these. So with our, where is it? Diamond shaped spatula, I'm just going to do some of those nice little diagonal swipes, right? So I'm just going to start here, pretend like my design over there doesn't exist, right? And I'm just going to take it, right? Get some frosting loaded up there, angle my spatula a little bit towards my cake, and pull up. And you can see I get this nice, beautiful, artistic paint swipe. And because I'm going up on these, I've got more range of motion available right now than I do when I'm pulling down. So I can make nice, longer, artistic, beautiful little swipes with these. And if I want to, this is a good one where you can just kind of start mixing up the colors. So clean your spatula if needed in between, go in with another color. Just get that frosting pressed against the side, angle your spatula a little bit towards the cake, and take a nice swipe up, right? If you don't like the way it went, you can always go back with it, right? It doesn't have to be a one-shot motion. So if you don't get a long enough one, just go back in with it. And you can see that gives us this nice upsweep motion. It's just beautiful. It's got some direction. It's really soft. You could do this tone on a cake just to create texture. Or you can do it in different colors like we're doing it just to create some really easy design detail without a lot of effort. You'll notice the only thing I've used to decorate this cake so far is the spatula I used to ice it and the ones that we're now using to apply these little effects. So I'm just going to go on with a little bit of my last color, right? So the color I used to ice the cake. And you can see that creates a nice little ombre fade of textures. I could then go back and repeat that pattern again. So it'd be really easy. Start with the first color. Go in there and apply that a little bit. And it's a nice way to just put a quick finish on there. You can just do swipes of color. You can clean your spatula in between. You don't even have to. You can just start going for it, right? Let those colors blend a little bit. Let them create some variety. So finally, we'll go into our little our little abstract pattern. And I left a lot of space for this just because I wanted it to take up some room. And I'm going to start with my little spatula, but I might grab some others as I go. And I think I'm going to start with my medium color. So I'm just going to start in what I think the middle of this pattern would be. And I want to create some really big lines to start with. So I've got a lot of space to work from, and I'm just going to start and I'm going to create a nice big swipe down the middle. Beautiful, right? You can see it tapers as it goes down. It's thicker at the top, it gets thinner. You can see that show through from the cake. So that's beautiful, right? And then off of that, I'm just going to load up the end of it, right? So before I loaded up the whole spatula to do this, right? You can see it's kind of the width of the whole spatula. Now I've just got about half of it loaded up. I'm just going to create some smaller streaks, right? And you'll notice I left some space in between there. One of the great things about creating patterns is you can take up quite a bit of room without too much real work, right? You can go the opposite direction, right? So create some streaks that go up instead of down. Just use a little bit, right? And just start layering that color in. So that's a nice kind of, you can see the pattern starts small, expands and contracts again, right? So we're making this kind of gradual, almost like wave-like design. I'll grab my darker color. And I'm just gonna go in and start layering more color in between, on top of, right, alongside of this. And having that cake be really nice and cool is really great for this because it means that it's gonna help the buttercream that you've already layered on there start to kind of harden and firm up, meaning that I can almost go right on top of it. And you can see now you've got those 3 colors of pink, you've got that bright pop there. It's beautiful. It's really gonna stand out for you. Right? And just put in some little streaks. Some big ones. Vary up how you hold that spatula, sometimes horizontally, right? Sometimes vertically. Some areas big, some areas small. And just go until you create a pattern you like. Add some color, add different layers, let things mix and blend. And don't be afraid to kind of experiment and explore a little bit. And a lot of times when I'm doing these kinds of patterns, I go back and I add things in kind of layers because I want to build up some texture and depth to the pattern as well. And I find the more that I kind of unfocus my eyes and kind of step back from it and just really kind of let it go and let the frosting kind of tell me where to put itself is the way to go. Like anywhere it thinks it needs to be, that's where I try to get it. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's one of those ones where I try to kind of step back and unfocus my eyes just a tiny bit to get a sense of where it needs more detail and where it looks good. So I've got my 2 main colors on, and I'm just going to go in and add some tiny little accents. So anywhere I think it needs a little more lighter color, I'm going to go in and put some that's the same as the cake. Right? So just breaking up any kind of big blocks. Adding a little texture. Right, so anywhere I feel like I have an area that just has too much of that dark or medium pink, I'm just going to go in and add just a little bit of my light pink. And just anywhere I think it needs just a tiny bit of detail, just a little bit of that tone on tone. Fantastic. And then finally, I'm just going to take some just tiny little streaks of my navy blue. So anywhere I think it needs just the littlest bit of color, and you can see that kind of breaks up that pink, gives me a nice little bit of depth. Just something beautiful. So it's just a little abstract design on the outside of the cake. Nothing too crazy, nothing too fancy. And you can just keep working on it until you like your result. So you don't even have to love everything that's going on. It's just a nice, beautiful kind of textured pattern that's really kind of fun and pleasing and just has some great little variety to it. Now, one thing you can do too to help your designs pop is add just a little bit of metallic. And you can get things like little edible gold paint and stuff. So if you want to, you can always take a little bit, tiny brush, and just do things like add a little bit of sparkle. And I always like doing this just to give it a little finishing touch, especially if you're doing a monotone creation like this one. It's got a lot of pink. I added just a little bit of that blue just to give it something, but you've got those nice, beautiful swipes of texture. So you have areas that are kind of protruding and are kind of rough, right? And it's a great way to just add a little bit of interest to it and just really kind of highlight some of those ridges and just complete a cute little design. And when I'm working on these, they're a great way to practice working with your palette knife and get really comfortable with it without really having to make anything specific. So I'm not trying to make flowers, right? I'm not trying to make a scene with mountains or trees or anything. I'm just making some cute little swipes, right? And so just use a little bit of an edible gold metallic paint just to give it a little highlight. So we have a nice, fun, messy, abstract design. And you can see just the change of colors, the various pinks, doing some dark, doing some light, some medium, and just adding a little hint of blue. It adds a nice little bit of interest to it. We have just this fun, textural, colorful design that you can really use for any occasion, holiday, right? So simpler things like the sweeps, it's nice if you do it all one color. It's beautiful even for a wedding or an anniversary. Add some brights in there if we're doing maybe a shower, whether that's baby or bridal. And just the little kind of like textured swipes for the scallops are a nice kind of almost floral feel. This one is a good one to practice, even if say you did it on the top of the cake. Start with the darkest color, go towards the lightest. It's gonna give you that floral feel, right? And just anytime you're doing something like that, imagine there's a point in the center and pull towards that point. It's going to give you a focal point, and it'll give it a very floral, beautiful, nice feel. And it's a way to practice those techniques and kind of get ready for things that actually have a subject, right? So something like doing flowers, mountains, trees, it gives you a nice handle on it without the pressure of having an actual design and having to have it look like something specific, which is why I really like these. And a lot of times a little bit of that metallic paint adds that extra little bit of polish you need to make it really look like a finished design. And it's a nice little way to go. So these are just 3 easy ways that you can use your palette knife to decorate a cake and make some fun textured designs with those. They're really simple, and just a little bit of color change, a tiny bit of metallic paint is a nice way to dress it up and kind of make cakes for any occasion that'll kind of get you used to using those palette knives before you take the step into doing more advanced things like flowers. That is all I have for today. Tom's shaking his head and letting me know we don't have any questions. So we will finish it up and just say we hope you enjoyed today's lesson, and we hope you'll tune in for future live classes.